Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with Kansas City-based veteran jazz drummer Arnold Young. He specializes in avant jazz, and his new album with the Roughtet is the 2022 CD, Fear is the Mind Killer. He has been around the Kansas City scene for the last 50 years. He studied at the UMKC Conservatory of Music and West African Percussion at UC Berkeley. He has performed with Sonny Simmons, Jaco Pastorius, Eddie Harris, Mike Dillon, Mark Southerland, Brian Haas, and so many others. His Roughtet explores new territories in written and improvised music. He's got a rich KC tale to tell. Enjoy.
Hey, how you doing? Is this Joe?
Yes, it is. How are you, sir?
Hey, man, how are you doing?
Everything's good, man. Thanks for taking a minute out.
Oh, no problem, man. I'm honored.
And I got to thank you for sending over the music. I really, really enjoyed the album, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good balance between, there's even some tunes that have chord changes like regular jazz, but I've been doing avant-garde since 64, so, I love straight-ahead jazz, too. I like it all, man.
I can feel it, though.
But this band kind of features free playing, but it's structured. It's not all just aleatoric. No, cut number 4 is the only one that's totally spontaneous with no plans at all or anything, no head or anything, just because it was dedicated to the AACM and to Arnold Chicago and Roscoe Mitchell, and, because I've been a big fan of the AACM for a long time. That's a Chicago organization.
Overall, with this album, how does it feel to come out now with kind of the world opening up and things are, we're in a different space? I mean, it's been really rough for musicians.
Yeah.
What we've gone through.
It's still rough for me. I've been battling shingles for over 4 months now.
No.
It's really been a bear. I'm still playing some, but at first I couldn't even play because it was so painful, but now I'm playing. I played Friday before last with Brant Jester and Pete Fusanaro and Jeff Harshbarger at Corvino. That was a fun gig. We just played standards and jazz standards. So I think it's good. It's opening up, obviously what we do in the Roughtet is a little off the beaten path, so I don't think there's as many opportunities for us as there would be for someone playing more normal jazz, But we get a few things. We've played at the Blue Room twice now, and we've played at the Ship a few times and various places,
So you've been in the Kansas City scene for quite some time. Let's kind of step back in time. Where were you born and raised? How did music become
I was
your life?
born and raised in Paola, Kansas. My father was an Air Force bigwig, and he had transferred to England, and he got killed in a freak plane crash just before we were going over there, so I ended up staying in my mother's hometown of Paola, Kansas. But 3 days after high school, I moved to Kansas City, and that's when my life began. That's really because I have a lifelong curse and blessing called hypopituitary dwarfism. When I was young, I didn't know it yet, but I ended up going to the Mayo Clinic about 8 times, and by the 3rd time they figured out that I had a benign tumor in my pituitary gland. So when I graduated high school, I was 3 inches shorter than the shortest girl in the class, and I looked like an 8-year-old kid. I went through puberty in college and after, so I'm kind of a freak in nature. Maybe that's why I do freaky music. I don't know. But, so my life started when I got here because it didn't matter if I was weird. I was a jazz musician, and I wasn't the only jazz musician in town anymore,
So
I had some valuable things in Paola, my band teacher was also my first teacher. I only took 2 years of lessons, the summer before my 5th grade and the summer before my 6th grade. And then after that, I didn't have a lesson until my last semester of senior in high school. My mom started driving me to Kansas City to take lessons from a wonderful drummer, jazz drummer and classical percussionist named Charles Gray. He's deceased. But, I still fondly remember all my mentors that I played with and jammed with. And, the one thing about the scene now that I don't like is it's so segregated. I'm older. I came up in the mid-'60s and left in 1980. Of course, the foundation was different then, and I played at the foundation with a lot of famous people and everything. And I played with a lot of African-American musicians. I came up playing a lot of organ music and stuff, B3, like this B3 at the Green Lady, but they're all white. The ones I played with were African-American, and it seemed like I got to play with a lot more African-Americans in the 60s and 70s. Now I never play with African-Americans. Of course, I lived for 8 years in San Francisco and played Afrobeat with Nigerians and played all kinds of great music. But here, it's just a segregated scene. There are people that are fighting against that. I would have to say Eddie Moore is one of the greatest cats around. I really like his music, and he's a great guy. And there's so many talented musicians of both races. I've occasionally gotten to play with Charles Williams. He's a fantastic pianist. And there's so many talented cats in this town now. It's just unbelievable. It just keeps getting better and better. You know, there needs to be more places to play. That's the main thing. More places for these beautiful young people to play, you know. And if I get to play some too, that's great, you know.
Yeah, so when you did move here and you started getting involved with the scene, how long did it take for you to take off, and what was it like then?
Well, I 3 days out of high school, I moved into the dorm at UMKC, and then, so I went to summer school in the fall. By the end of my freshman year, I was working a couple of nights a week. By my sophomore year, I was working 3-4 nights a week. Of course, back then we had this wonderful thing called Troost that was destroyed in late summer '69 by the riots. And before that happened, Troost was a street that had over 20 clubs that had music almost every night. And a lot of it was jazz, some of it was R&B, you know, there was all kinds of stuff. But, you know, there was just way more clubs back then, and there were a lot of clubs that I really loved that were on the African-American side of town, you might say. You know, Solar Lounge, Walter's Crescendo, these are where I played when I was still a kid, really, when I came here, you know. I really grew up here, not in my hometown. I mean, I'm just amazed by the amount of talent in this town. It's just unbelievable. It's just, it's good. I mean, Bobby did it. Bobby came back, and that changed everything, you know?
Absolutely. I agree. So early on in your life, who were some influences, some heavy influences?
Well, when I moved into the dormitory, in those days, this was the summer of '63, in those days, most of the people that went to UMKC lived in Kansas City. It wasn't, it wasn't a tenth of the size it is now. And so there was hardly anyone in the dorm. There was some guy up on the 4th floor, and I was on the 2nd floor. And as soon as there was this hirsute, heavy-set guy on the 1st floor, and as soon as he found out I was going to the conservatory and that I was into jazz, he glommed onto me. He was a bass player from New York named Richard Youngstein, and he was my teacher. He made me go back and listen to Shelley Roe Morton and Louis Armstrong. He made me listen to Lester Young until I thought I was going to puke, and he made me listen. I got into Monk. And then he hit me with all the bebop. Then he hit me with the avant-garde, too. I started hearing Ornette in 1963. You know, and Ornette made sense to me for some reason. Like, I love Train. I love Train probably more than anything, but it took me a while to hear what Train was doing. I couldn't get it at first, you know. I wasn't used to modern jazz. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a flashy big band drummer. You know, I like Duke Ellington and Count Basie and Stan Kenton, and, that's what I wanted to do, but I'm superbly unfit for that. I work way better in a small group because of the dynamic of interplay, and, it just works better for me, I think. So Richard Youngstein, Charles Gray, my teacher, he was a great Kansas City drummer. He moved to Mexico, about 18 years ago, and he passed a few years ago. All my mentors are gone now. Now I have to be the mentor. And that's why I love some of the young musicians I'm getting to play with and jam with. They're really, they're just great, man.
The hallmark of you has been longevity. What has been the key to your longevity and your love for this?
I quit smoking cigarettes 26 years ago in January of '96. I eat some organic food. Not all my diet is that great, but I try to have a good diet. Playing drums keeps you young. The music keeps you young. I don't know. I mean, I'm a freak of nature. My hair still isn't gray, and I'm almost 77 years old. That's a little weird. Tim Brewer, I got to jam with him at Brad Gregory's place the other day. Fantastic. We used to be really tight in the late 70s, and I hardly ever get to play with him now. But, he still has hair that isn't gray, but his beard is gray. So figure that one out.
Yeah, right.
I just think, you got to take care of yourself. That's what you got to do. I mean, I fell into a real bad way in the late 60s and early 70s, and I used narcotics, but I figured I woke up and I got out of that. I got off the slippery slope. I've been taking care of myself ever since, as well as I can. Because I want to play as long as I can. If I ever feel like I can't play well anymore, I'm not going to go out there and play. I'll just concentrate on my other things like writing and art.
So, the one thing that I've read and looking into your history is that, you're such a prominent piece of this scene, but you've been kind of on the underground, so to speak, of things. How does this happen? What's your summary?
Well, partly
of
because in 1960, the fall of '64, the bass player I told you and a piano player came up my stairs. I finally moved out of the dorm and into a rented room. They came up and said, "You got to come with us right now. We have to make a recording." And our drummer fell down the fire escape and broke his leg. And I don't think he could have done it because he was a good straight-ahead jazz drummer. He didn't have much imagination. So we went down to this archaic Damon recording studio down at Paseo and Linwood, and in the back of I think it's the Masonic Temple or whatever it is. We played like a monk tune, then we played a bird tune, and I said, "What's the next tune?" And they said, "God's Museum." I go, "Man, I don't know that one." And they said, "We're going to make it up as we go along." And I thought about that for a tenth of a second and went, "Sure." And it always made sense to me. Even when I was in high school, I would ask my band teachers and different people, "Why does everything I play have to be over a preset form? Can I just play, No, it's the only way to make sensible music. Well, they were probably wrong. I mean, both ways work. It's not an either-or situation for me with avant-garde. I just think that anywhere else you go, it's part of the jazz scene. It's part of the history and legacy of this music. And it's overlooked in this town. It's just overlooked, and I guess maybe that's why I've been overlooked. Plus, I don't know. Who knows, man? I'm not perfect, that's for sure. I got a bad reputation by the late 60s, and then, since then I'm trying to overcorrect. That's why I get to every gig an hour ahead, because I'm still overcorrecting from when I was late and spaced out, so.
Absolutely.
It only takes a couple of years to ruin your life, and you spend the rest of it trying to put it back together.
What do you like the best about Kansas City?
Oh, man, that's a hard one. Well, a lot of my friends, I have young friends and I have friends that are my age, but I end up seeing, I'm really happy that I'm able to make some good young friends. And a lot of the people I hang with are way younger than me. It just worked out that way. I guess I'm young at heart or something, but I love Stan Kesser. I love all the great players here, Rod Fleeman, man. There's so many great players here, young and old. I mean, Brant Chester, he's amazing. Pete Trusanaro blows my mind. He's so bad, And, it's so great to be able to play with those young people because then I give them my energy and they give me their youth. There's just so many great musicians. I don't know. I don't know what I like about Kansas City. It's just that I've lived here most of my life. I didn't want to come back here. I never wanted to leave San Francisco. I was very successful out there musically. But I had to come back here to take care of my mother. So that's what I did. And then I'm kind of stuck here now. That's not so bad. I like it. It's nice.
Yeah.
It's a great town, It's livable, man. I'm a jazz musician. I'm not rich. So I can afford to live here,
Yeah. What was the first live jazz show that you ever saw that really blew you away?
Well, when I was 14, I forced my mother to take me to 63rd and Truth. A new shopping center had opened called The Landing. It's still there. But anyway, there was a music store that had a grand opening, and they brought in Duke Ellington. And so I got to hear Duke Ellington 12 times, and he still had Harry Carney and Johnny Hodges and all those cats. And that's one of the major experiences of my life. And Count Basie. And before that, I say in high school, I went to two of these things called Stan Kenton clinics. They were clinics for high school-aged jazz players. And, man, I got to hear Stan Kenton a lot and a bunch of Cannonball Adderley. I didn't quite understand. When I was in high school, I couldn't quite get to bebop and modern jazz yet. It just sounded like I couldn't, how it is. You have to learn how to follow it. Then once you learn how to follow it, I've spent a lot of time learning to listen without being analytical. Most jazz musicians, if they listen, they go, "Oh yeah, he's doing that," or "He's doing that." I don't listen that way. I try to listen. I might not even recognize who I'm listening to because I'm not listening to it in an analytical way, and I had to teach myself to undo that way of listening so I could hear music sort of like regular folks, non-musicians hear it, I don't know. I've studied a lot of different kinds of music. I mean, there's a lot of jazz drummers in this town that just blow me to pieces, and there's no doubt about that. Guys like Brian Stever and John Kazuma, they're much better jazz drummers than I am, but I bet they couldn't play a reggae gig like me. I mean, I played Afrobeat with Nigerians in San Francisco. I never played a straight-ahead jazz gig for 8 years. I played with a master avant-garde man named Sonny Simmons for over 2 years. That was a great experience. I always liked his music, and I talked to him about 5 weeks before he passed.
So I got a question about the avant way. You know, there's a lot of people out there in jazz that may not get into it, or they're interested in it, or people that don't know that that's going to be the show, but they hear it and they're trying to wrap their heads around it. How do you wrap your head around the avant jazz?
Well, the way I think of it in a lot of ways, if you go back to the very early stuff, the very early avant-garde, you know, by the late 50s, the musicians were so good at playing bebop at amazing tempos and never, you know, after a while, some of them felt like, I kind of feel like I'm running the high hurdles. Everything I play has to fit this form. And so people started, you know, like Ornette. I mean, I think Bird's revolution caught on because it was new ways to play and new chords superimpositions over songs everybody already knew. Ornette's the opposite. He took the rug away and said, make it on your own, you know, and not everyone could do that or get to that. And I understand that, but it's part of my music, and I can't let it go because I believe in it, you know. I mean, I like I say, I like the whole spectrum, man. I don't care if it's Lester Young or Lester Bowie. I like it, you know. I love it. I love jazz and music in general, but classical music too. We got a good orchestra here now. That's really neat.
So you have a new album out. The world's opening up. What's the future look like for you?
I'm not sure at this point. I'm just going to play it by ear. I'm going to try to see if I can book some gigs for the Roughtet. It hasn't been easy. And we don't play that often, and I feel bad because the musicians I have, Quinn Wallace plays trumpet and electronic music, and he also contributes compositions. Jacob Schwartzberg plays saxophones, and he's just great. He's fantastic. Both of these guys graduated in 2021 from Bobby Watson's jazz program at UMKC. And my bass player, John Nichols, played with me. The first long-term avant-garde jazz project in Kansas City was Ad for a Dream from about 3 years, starting around 1970. I couldn't get any jazz players to play that kind of music, so what I did was pervert R&B musicians that I hung out with all the time. And first I played them hard bop. First I played them stuff, funky stuff like, you know, Sidewinder by Lee Morgan or something like that. Then I hit them with hard bop. Then I hit them with Train. Then I hit them with everything, Sun Ra, Ornette, everything, you know. And they loved it, and we played free. You know, we had everything from totally written out to totally improvised pieces, and we existed outside the Kansas City jazz scene. On a much slower level, we paralleled the Loft Jazz scene in New York and the AACM in Chicago and the Black Artist Group in St. Louis, except we were white, you know? I mean, we had our own performance space, you know, with we put in an arch foam rubber ceiling, we put in egg crates on the walls, we got 60 seats out of an old theater, and John Nichols was the bassist in That for a Dream, and now it's over 50 years later and we're playing again. So that's pretty rewarding, too. So the band's kind of a blend of two old guys and two young guys, which, you know, I don't care about people's age. I've never judged people on age. A person is a person, you know. If they're doing something cool, that's great. I don't care if they're 80 or 8, you know. I love young people, though. Young people are fun to be around. A lot of my friends my age, they won't ever go out of the house. They'll never come to my gig. The young kids come out to my gig, but my friends my age won't leave the house. You know, that's, well, you can understand that with the COVID and everything. That's obvious that it's definitely curtailed. Even to this date, it's still, I think, affecting people in a lot of ways, you know.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm someone in need of work. I need to work on myself. I need to get better at living, and I try to preserve my health as long as possible. I see myself as a creative person. You know, I mean, I made art. I make art. I'm not a great artist. I'm a much better musician than I am an artist. And I'm writing. I've been writing for 20 years. I haven't published anything yet, but I got a new book that I really like that I've written under my own name. The others are all short stories and stuff, and they're pen names. But this is a story of my life. It's called Close Encounters of the Jazz Kind, and it's not quite done yet. I've been working on it for 2 years, and it's just about all these different episodes, like on my first trip to New York, I went to Slugs and to hear Lee Morgan. He came over and sat with me for a half an hour on the break. That's in there. The time I just met and played with, like when I met Jaco Pastorius in 1970. He wasn't world famous yet. He was just Florida famous. I've been able to play and jam with a lot of great musicians, and that's what the book's about.
Arnold, man, hey, thank you for opening up with me here at the show. I'm
sure I talked too much, as usual.
No, you were wonderful, man. You opened everything up that I was wanting to ask you. So thank you. Good luck.
Well, I'm honored that you like the music, and I'm honored to be on your show, man. I think you're doing a great thing for jazz in Kansas City.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest minds and players in Kansas City and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Arnold for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.